And to interview Keith and make the presentation, KMOX Radio, Tom Ackerman.
Ron, thanks very much. That was quite the cheer for your Seinfeld appearance.
That has opened up a whole second life for me. It's a whole different, it reached the whole nation, the Seinfeld show. It was such a successful comedy series for so long, and I just fell into that. Jerry was a Brooklyn kid, and I was his favorite player, and I was 2 years retired, and he reached out to me, and it was one of the great experiences of my life, really.
There are some great looks back there from your New York days, but what does it mean to you to be here in St. Louis and this honor, the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame?
Well, I can tell you I grew up a Cardinal fan. I think everybody knows that here. My father, in World War II, was in the Navy. He served at Pearl Harbor. He was a professional first baseman, played in the Cardinal chain, and got as high as AA. And in 1945, when Stan went into the Navy, he played in the Navy team with my father. So as a young kid growing up in San Francisco, Stan would come in the latter part of his career and leave tickets for us at Candlestick Park. And so I was sold on that. I was in the clubhouse after the games. I remember one particular instance in '63. I think that was Stan's last year. I was 9 years old, and I'm sitting in the clubhouse. I got Stan Musial on my left, and I got Ken Boyer on my right. So later on, I'm playing for Ken Boyer in AAA, and he was a AAA manager, and then my big league manager. So it was a dream come true for me. That's what I always wanted to do, was be a major league player, and gosh, to be drafted by the Cardinals and then play for the Cardinals and then be on a world championship team with the Cardinals was just, it's just a wonderful thing.
What a performer he was in 1979, the co-MVP with Willie Stargell, hits .344, and his second of 11 consecutive Gold Gloves at first base. But that '82 team, you have a chance at a ring. You're down 3-2, coming home to play a very good Brewers team. Take us into that clubhouse before that memorable Game 6. You homered and went on to blast the Brewers in that game.
Well, remember, it was Don Sutton we beat, too, who's a Hall of Fame pitcher who won quite a few ball games, and Don Sutton was a particularly tough pitcher for me. Anybody that had a great curveball and can throw a turnover screwball 3-1 and also have a razor blade ball they can cut, which he had a razor blade in his glove all the time. And I always had trouble off of him, and that particular at bat, I think it was a 2-run home run. It made it 7-0, I'm not sure. And then remember the rain came, and it rained like heck. But that home run in the World Series was really special. I had like a 12-pitch at bat off him, and he threw everything at me, and I managed to foul off all these tough pitches, and he finally hung me a curveball. Thank you very much.
And I was at that game with my dad, and then, as a kid growing up in St. Louis, a Cardinals fan, I had to watch you as a Met. Now, you were traded to the Mets in '83. In '84, that was a good Mets team. '85 was an even better Mets team. What was the difference? What changed with the '86 team that took you over the edge and got you that championship?
Well, a bunch of young players by the name of Dwight Gooden, Darryl Strawberry. You had Sid Hernandez, Ron Darling. It was an amazing collection of players. I wasn't sure if I was going to stay because I had an option year. I was traded in '83 on the deadline in June, the old deadline, and then I remember Frank Cashen, the general manager, called me and said, look, we want you to stay, but if you don't want to stay, I understand, but we're going to the winter meetings. If you don't want to stay, I want to trade you. So my father basically convinced me to stay with the Mets because he had, being the baseball junkie that he was, he had seen on ESPN the minor leagues in Tidewater. He had seen Dwight Gooden and Darling, and he said, they got some young, Strawberry, and they got some young players. I think you should stay. So I took my father's advice and stayed, and it was probably the best decision of my life. It was very thrilling to win the '86 World Series because we all know the Mets were so terrible during those late '70 years, and to turn it around so quickly. It's a team sport. The same thing with St. Louis in '82. It was, when I got called up, Joe sprained his thumb, and they didn't want to put Joe on the disabled list, and that's the year we lost to the Pirates the last day of the season. And I got called up in late August, and I played every day for 8 days until Joe got healthy, then I was on the bench. So I took McCarver's spot on the roster. So that didn't endear me with Bob Gibson. So just, it was the 67, 68 that were starting to get out. Lou was the only one left, and Bob was there, but Bob retired first. So it was really kind of, I think, the beginning of a new turnover from the Musial era to the 60s with Gibson and Brock. And then we had Gary Templeton then, and I think it started a whole new generation of Cardinal baseball. It was one of the great thrills of my life. Cardinals are the Yankees of the National League. It's a great tradition here, great fans. I mean, I got to play in New York, and I don't know if I would have made it if I would come up highly touted as I was in St. Louis if I'd have been in New York. So much more pressure there, so much things demanded of you. But the fans embraced me here, and I did struggle my first 3 years, but eventually it came around, and I had a wonderful 8 years here.
He is a great part of Cardinal history. Ladies and gentlemen, from the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame, Keith Hernandez.